All right, welcome in everybody. It's going to be episode number 17 of the Monty and Murdy College Football Show. Monty, we had a tough one this week, man. Or not really, we got to get a bye, but Tennessee had a tough one this week. How are you doing, man? What's going on?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Tennessee lost, the Chiefs lost,
Mm.
and I'm now 2-9 in fantasy in one of my leagues. So it's just bad football weekend for this household, but feeling good nonetheless. Tennessee has a good bounce back game this next week, but overall, a lot of stuff happened. Um, for the most part, we'll talk about ASU, like we talked about last week, sneaking in, and now here they are on the main stage in the Big 12. South Carolina surviving, um, Clemson surviving, and then it's Monday, November 18th. So the rankings haven't come out yet. So we'll get to talk about maybe some certain scenarios that might play out come tomorrow night. What this past week means for a couple different teams. But a lot of stuff happening, and obviously with the previews coming up for this next week, got some big games to talk about. Um, Exciting stuff. End of the season coming down to the wire.
It's kind of crazy to think that, we're already on week 13. Season always seems like it flies by. The anticipation building up to it seems like it takes forever. But hey, we're already here. We still got some exciting stuff for y'all. Monty's kind of already walked y'all through the recap. Y'all know how the show goes. Let's go ahead and dive into our Week 12 recap. Monty, first game on the slate, we had Clemson traveling to Pitt. Clemson ended up escaping with a 24-20 win. Do you have any thoughts when you were watching that game?
Um, just well, I mean, obviously it was a lot closer than we thought. I think it was going to be. Um, I thought Clemson's offense was going to take care of business for 4 quarters. They ended up taking care of business at the end there, especially. Um, One thing I did talk about was Cade Klubnik was going to Cade Klubnik, and he did in a good way. Towards the end, he was able to clutch up and win that game for him. But impressive game nonetheless by Pittsburgh. When it comes to Clemson, you don't really know what you're going to get with them. I think this year is kind of the theme. Um, as we know, they lost to Georgia week one, and then they were hot for several weeks, and then all of a sudden they slip up against Louisville. But it seems like they're going to be at least in the conversation, playoff conversation. I don't think necessarily they're going to make it. Uh, they're definitely in that conversation. They were able to survive uh, with a talented quarterback.
Yeah, kind of interesting offensive strategy for Pitt here. They kind of just, the Eli Holstein didn't play for them. They started Nate Yarnell, started the backup quarterback, and they more kind of, whenever you think about a team starting their backup quarterback, you're like, okay, they're going to try to work him in, do the run game, lean on the run game, get him worked in, quick, easy throws. Not really Pitt's plan here. They just kind of said, hey, doesn't really matter. We're doing what we do. Nate Yarnell ended up throwing the ball 54 times for 34 completions, but he got 350 yards. He kind of split one touchdown, one interception. But the big stat line that stands out for this one for me was the 13 penalties committed by Pitt. Kind of undisciplined, for over, exactly 100 yards, and the two turnovers. They kind of beat themselves. They were able to move the ball better than I thought they would be able to, especially with Eli Holstein not being able to play. Pitt was able to move the ball. Offense put up some good points, especially in the second half, mainly the fourth quarter where they were able to score 13. Uh, Overall, though, Pitt gave them a better fight, especially what I expected when Eli Holstein wasn't going to be making the start for them. It kind of speaks to that offensive coordinator and, the kind of quarterback coach being able, it's like, hey, to get that backup quarterback, had to have been engaged and get him where he's ready to play against a pretty good Clemson defense.
Yeah, overall, I mean, it was a fun game to watch too. I mean, like I said, the Cade Klubnik at the end, that was
Yeah.
cool. I mean, because if you watch the first half of that game, especially like Clemson, like physicality wise, was kind of getting beat up, and they just kind of they stayed resilient throughout the game, and Cade Klubnik did not get flustered despite being down, and it looked like they might have won that game. But yeah, overall impressive win, I think, for Clemson. It's one of those teams, like I said, they're just kind of a wild card this year. It'll be interesting to see what happens to them.
Yeah, like I said, they need a little bit of help, I believe, to get them into the ACC championship game.
I hope people need to lose, but
yeah, they need a little bit of help. But hey, crazier things have happened, especially as we're coming into these last 2 weeks of the season. Still an opportunity, and all you need is if you're in one of the Power Four, you just need a seat at that conference championship game, and you could be looking at a playoff spot.
And this year of all years, I mean, it's very 2007-esque, so I wouldn't put it past anybody.
Yeah, it definitely is. So let's go ahead. We'll roll on to the next game. One we both predicted wrong here. Arizona State went to Manhattan, Kansas, take on K-State. Ended up winning 24-14.
So this one I wanted to say. So we predicted the winner wrong, but we actually predicted this right in the sense of Avery Johnson.
Yeah.
We said, he plays well at home, and so with that, they were going to be more successful. He didn't play well this time around at home, and you see what happens, right? And I'm not taking anything away from Arizona State by any means, because they're the kind of that. Now they're the quiet team in the Big 12. No one really knew that they were 7-2. Now sitting at 8-2 with a good win. And they got
more on them a little later.
Yes, we do. BYU in Phoenix this next week, but yeah, I mean Avery Johnson in the sense of playing well at home, or basically the games being kind of judged based on how he plays. I mean that's basically what happened, right? He I had it written down earlier. Thought I wrote it down on here. He threw 2 interceptions, 0 touchdowns. I remember that. So it's like ASU was able to get the takeaways, and they really didn't do anything on the run, on the ground, like I thought they would. Like anything, of real significance. But they actually won the game through the air, which ended up. I mean, you see the score. It's more or less a defensive game. But when ASU is able to get 2 interceptions out of the game, I mean that is a defensively dominant game. So they were able to do that, and look out for Arizona State, I guess. That's awesome.
Yeah. Kind of one that really snuck up on everybody. They weren't predicted to do very well, but Kenny Dillingham is obviously got that program headed. I'm not going to say the direction of the program. I will say that they are performing well. Kansas State, they just couldn't overcome they had a slow start. No points in the first half. Blank. 0. And Kansas State or Arizona State was able to grind them out in the second half. It's kind of a tale of 2 halves. I mean, Kansas State put up 8 in the fourth quarter. Arizona State only had 3 points, but hey, they had 21 going into half, so they're like, hey, we'll just coast it out, rely on our defense, and not try to get ourselves to lose this game. Obviously aware of the stakes that this game had, even though the rest of us might not have been, quite clued in. It's like, hey, how close is Arizona State?
Right.
But yeah, man, that's all I got. I mean, Sam Leavitt, good game. Efficient throwing the football, 21 for 34, 3 touchdowns. Avery Johnson, like I said, man, we've said it all year. I've said it since like week 1. Avery Johnson, he is just.
If he plays well, they play well. If he plays bad, they play bad.
Yeah, if he can ever find a steady state, man, I mean, they will, to where he's like a consistent, solid performer for him. I mean, Kansas State is going to be really good. It's just finding that consistency of him as a young player. It'll come in time. He's still, I think he's in his first year starting, but he's either a redshirt freshman or a sophomore. So he's got time to, develop that. But he flashes the potential. You see where it is, and then you also see, hey, he's still a young player.
Absolutely.
So let's roll on to the next one, man. We got Missouri versus South Carolina. Close one. South Carolina ended up winning 34-30 after being favored by 2 touchdowns almost in this one. So Missouri Missouri gave them a hell of a fight. Uh, I didn't expect this one to be as close as it was. Obviously, Brady Cook coming back from Missouri was huge in this game. I didn't think he was going to play. I thought it was going to be Drew Pine. So he, Brady Cook was able to come back. However, you can't talk about this game without talking about Lenore Sellers. Uh, 350 yards, 5 touchdowns. That's a big time performance in a big time game for him.
On 21 throw, 30 attempts, but 21
Mm-hmm.
completed throws. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and I mean Brady Cook, he was all right. I mean, he didn't play lights out. What was surprising for me was that how well Missouri was able to run the ball in this game against that South Carolina defense. Thought that was going to be a point where they struggled, especially with how good South Carolina is across that defensive line. Obviously, Missouri found some things in their little outside zone scheme that they were able to take advantage of. How aggressive South Carolina is on the defensive front.
Yeah, I mean, you basically had exactly what I had. Brady Cook coming back definitely helped. They had a late push at the end there. Mizzou did. Um, Gave South Carolina a little bit of scare there, but yeah, Sellers is clutch, and obviously South Carolina's guy for the foreseeable future. I mean, you said it exactly right. I mean, 21 of 30, 353 yards, 5 touchdowns, and 1 interception. I'm going to talk about him a little bit later,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, having him in that game, that was the difference, straight up. I mean, especially with Mizzou's late push there. I mean, if they didn't have him, I don't know if they were going to be able to make that game winning drive. They scored with 15 seconds left to win the game. So impressive game by him. They snuck out of there. We predicted that one correctly, of course, in the sense of the winner. But hey, Mizzou scored 30 though. You can see the difference when they play with Brady Cook versus when they don't. So I'll
Yeah.
give that to them for sure. But man, yeah, Lenore Sellers is something for South Carolina. Scary for other teams in the SEC now because he kind of came out of the woodwork. No one was really expecting him to be. Yeah, South Carolina fans, they might say, "Oh, well, we knew this, right?" But from the outside looking in, no one really knew who this guy was coming in.
Yeah.
And obviously, he is very talented, very clutch, and South Carolina's guy.
Yeah. South Carolina, they're probably going to lose at least one of their stars on the defensive line this year. After this season. However, with Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart and all the guys that they got, that's a young group. South Carolina could be looking pretty competitive here for the next couple of years. Safe to say, Shane Beamer, he kind of came into the season possibly on the hot seat. It was talked about and it was considered, but I think he's done at least well enough to definitely keep his job and hopefully get some buy-in from the donor base in South Carolina.
Absolutely, yeah. To say the least, he's definitely saved. Yeah, he's bought himself some more time at least, but um, arguably might have bought himself another contract. So we'll see.
Yeah, very, very possibly looking at an extension for Shane Beamer this offseason. Um, let's go ahead and dive in. Game of the week. Game of the week. And unfortunately for you, you got this one right. Tennessee went to Georgia. Tennessee ended up losing 31-17. Dogs ended up coming out on top. Monty, let's go ahead and we'll let you go ahead and rant on it. What you got on it?
Yeah, I mean, not so much of a rant. And if anybody thinks I'm going to talk about the officiating, I'm not going to. I have my own opinions, but that's not. At the end of the day, that's not what it was about. There's some questionable calls, but uh, what was good to see from Tennessee was that the offense played well in the first half, right? Looked like we were going to take care of business, right?
Yep.
Right out of the gate, and then we go up 2 possessions. It was looking good. I had the strong feeling. I was like, no, just wait. Sure enough, 14 unanswered by Georgia. But it was good to at least see us score points in the first half
Yeah.
against an SEC opponent. Nico played, of course, for those who don't know. I'm sure everyone knows, listens. But Nico Yamaleava did end up playing. He played fine. He didn't have 200 yards passing, but he didn't turn the ball over. Um, It was good to see him play. Good to see Tennessee score in the first half. I mean, it was tied 17-7 at half, and then this in the second half. So our offense completely flipped from the norm of what Tennessee normally does. We play slow in the first half, then we score our points in the second half. Scored literally all our points in the first half, and then, like I said, Georgia was going to Georgia and Kirby Smart. I mean, I firmly believe that there were zero outcomes in that game where Georgia left without a W. And I think it could have been any opponent probably in the country. Like, Georgia was not going to lose that game to anybody. Not in Athens. Not Kirby Smart. Not in that specific scenario of a kind of a winner most likely go home for Georgia. There was no outcome. And that's my opinion, but I firmly believe that. And then, of course, our first time Tennessee's defense gave up more than 20 points in the season. So if we can't hold a team to 20 or less, based on how our offense has been playing shockingly this year, we're not going to beat them, which we saw. Another thing that bothered me about the Tennessee defensive side, and this was so weird to see, 0 sacks. And this was one thing I had talked about going into this past week about Ole Miss. They were getting home rushing 4, right? We were not able to do that. We were only rushing 4. For whatever reason, Tim Banks, our defense coordinator, didn't blitz at all, and against a quarterback who struggles against pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So Carson Beck was sitting back there for 3, 4, 5 seconds, 6 seconds on some plays, and with no pressure. And so that showed. He threw the ball for 40, 25 of them connected, 25-40, 347 yards and 2 touchdowns. Because you don't want to blitz against him. Why? I do not know. I don't understand why there was no blitz, why there was no pressure on a guy that does struggle against pressure. But because of that, he played well and didn't turn the ball over. So we didn't capitalize on his struggles. Dylan Sampson, another 100-yard game, 19, 101 with a touchdown. So he's still obviously the guy. I'll let you talk a little bit more about the O-line because I can. You saw one of my notes on your note. I can go on about those guys, but when it comes to our offense, I don't know what the answer is. We talk about it every week about connecting on deep balls, connecting on that 10 to 20 yard area are where our drops are, and then Nico would overthrow. There wasn't a whole lot of that. It didn't really seem like we took a ton of shots downfield. I'm not taking anything away from Georgia. Because they played really well, and I knew they were going to play well. Tough game to watch. UGA had 4 yards, 453 to Tennessee's 319. So outgained us in all facets of the game, and it showed. So 17 and a half. Georgia won 31-17. They just scored more points than us.
Yeah. Kind of a very competitive game in the first half. One thing that stood out to before I get on to the O-line play, which I was frustrated on your behalf because it was like, it's like you see something happen and you're like, then it starts standing out to you. It's like it doesn't bother you. It's like you see a scratch on your car, right? It's like if you had never seen that little hairline scratch, you wouldn't even pay attention until you actually see it, and then all it does is that just constantly annoys you. So I'll talk about that here in a sec in regards to the Tennessee offensive line. But Georgia's defense, man, they kind of 0 explosive plays from Tennessee in this game, which is explosive plays for everybody is 20-plus yards, 20-plus yard game. There was 0 of them for Tennessee, which, I mean, that's kind of – the offensive system or scheme that Josh Heupel comes from or is a disciple of is the veer and shoot. The whole idea is that you move laterally, you do quick game, jet sweeps, all that stuff, and then you take shots down the field. If Georgia's able to take away the shoot part of the offense, which is, taking those deep shots or, those explosive plays, then you kind of make the offense one-dimensional. And it's granted, Nico, he didn't put the ball in harm's way. He kind of just he kind of played within himself. I mean, uh, granted, it's not, you don't want to ask a young quarterback to be able to go in there and play hero ball. But he just kind of ran the system, and unfortunately, with what Georgia was able to do on defense, there wasn't a lot of opportunity there. And the times that Josh Heupel did call the deep shots, he would miss. And that could be for a lot of things. It could be he's out of sync with it. Sometimes deep balls, it's something like, hey, it's kind of a feel throw. It's something just is not in the flow of the game, or he's just, the offense isn't in an established rhythm. So it's kind of a props to Georgia on that. Tennessee, I mean, obviously they haven't, since they've gotten into SEC's play, it's not like they've been just lighting everybody up offensively. They've been mainly relying on their defense. Unfortunately, though, Georgia, with not getting any pressure on Carson Beck, he was able to play like the Carson Beck from last year. The reason everybody thought he was coming into the season, that's the number one pick. That's that's the next guy. That's the next, NFL freaking top prospect. And with no pressure in his face, he looked like that. Speaking of what I'd spoke on earlier, the Georgia or the Tennessee offensive line, Spraggins, the right guard, number 76, he's got some bad issues in pass pro. I don't know if he doesn't seem to know where he's supposed to be working or where he fits in when somebody's picked up. I watched him a couple times. He would literally, the defensive tackle would come on, hit the center, and the defensive tackle would spin around. And I watched Spraggins move. So the center's here, and he would move in front and chase that defensive tackle and leave a gaping hole that a linebacker just pursued straight down Nico's face. There's another time where he gets his eyes caught in a bad spot, looking left, and then he looks back right, and I guess he's checking to see if somebody's coming from the flat, or maybe a defensive end, is coming to stint around that defensive tackle, and he's looking right, and then the linebacker runs right by him. Like, it looks like he sees him at the last second, and he looks like he tries to put a hand up and then just lets him go. And it's just, I mean, it just stood out to me over and over again. I'm like, when I was watching Tennessee's offense, I was just kept focusing in on 76, and I'm like, all right, what's he going to do this play? That was almost the entire second half of me watching this game. He's definitely got some issues in pass pro. Do you know what class he is? Is he a senior? Is he a young guy?
He's older. I don't know if he's a senior. I'll be able to tell you here in a sec. Oops. Monty Spraggins.
But yeah, he's got some issues. Obviously, you had some notes on Lance Hurd. Now, granted, like I said, man, it just stood out to me. I just kept focusing in on it, so I kind of missed some of the stuff that Lance Hurd was giving up.
He's a senior. I knew he was older.
He's a senior. Okay, so yeah, that's definitely a little bit more of an experienced player for your eyes to still be in the wrong place, and you just not be able to figure out where you work in the pass pro scheme. So Tennessee's definitely going to want to get that cleaned up, because I know if I can see it on tape, every freaking defensive coordinator that Tennessee has to play after this is going to be able to see that on tape and be like, hey, we need to scheme up stuff to attack 76 with our blitz packages or whatever the case.
Well, and that's basically what happened, right? I mean, Kirby Smart sees and adjusts to everything. So you're gonna, if you're making mistakes, he's gonna capitalize on it. I mean, that's what happened. I'm not taking anything away from Georgia this game at all, nor am I saying Tennessee necessarily played a bad game. It wasn't a bad game. Like, we played fine. I said that there was no outcome. I genuinely believe that had Ole Miss played this game against Georgia in Athens in this scenario, they would have lost. If Alabama played Georgia in this same scenario in Athens this past Saturday, they would have lost as well. Texas would have lost again. I think every single team, or almost every single team in the country, would have lost. By how many? I don't know. Tennessee lost by 14. So, some would say, they got their butts kicked. I mean, I didn't really feel that way. I felt like we were in that game the whole time.
I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't say you got your butts kicked. I mean, I still come out of this game and I'm like, those are still two of the best 12 teams in the country. That's
Agree.
That's
But
me looking at it.
yeah, some would call me biased, but and I try not to be because I know we have our issues. But um, I would also argue if Georgia and Tennessee played each other in this same scenario in Knoxville, we probably would have won that game. So I think Tennessee, Georgia, and vice versa, which obviously happened, but to all the teams. Um, I think Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, and Ole Miss are all like the same team when it comes to how good they are this season when it comes to talent wise and everything in their own ways. But you'll see that these all four teams are most likely going to go 10-2, and somebody's probably going to get left out of the playoff. But you could have put every single one of those four teams in that scenario in Tennessee's position or Georgia's position, and the outcome would have been the exact same, depending on where. Like you just unplug and plug one in, unplug, plug one in to one of those spots in that scenario. Say it was Ole Miss at Alabama, but Alabama was in Georgia's position. Alabama's winning that game. Or you say Ole Miss is in Georgia's position and it's played in Oxford and Alabama's coming to town. Ole Miss is winning that game.
Yeah.
So I don't think, and I'm not saying Georgia's not the better team. I've been on them the whole year saying that they were better, but I just think in this scenario, if you put any one of those four teams there, so I'm not disappointed with how Tennessee played necessarily. Obviously, it sucks to lose, but I mean, I think we're overall fine. It just throws a wrench into things, obviously, when it comes to the playoff, and that Arkansas game is showing to be a real problem too. But we'll talk about that as the rest of the season goes on.
Yeah, speaking of Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee, let's go ahead and roll on to our top 25. Kind of led. Interesting enough, if you look at, so granted, we're recording this on Monday. The college football poll does not come out till Tuesday. So we'll get this out. This podcast will be out probably before the college football poll even drops. So we're going off this based on kind of our, we haven't looked at what the committee said about the games this week. We can go off the AP top 25 and we'll give you our best kind of thoughts about it. So the AP actually has 4 Big 12 teams, or Big 10 teams, sorry, in the top 5, with Ohio State, or Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and Indiana, with Texas splitting them at number 3, followed by Notre Dame at 6, and then you close out with the 4 teams you were just talking about: Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee at 7 through 10. And when I look at this poll, I mean, you got to think there's a world where we have six 2-loss SEC teams. If Texas goes to A&M here in 2 weeks and loses, A&M is a 2-loss. Tennessee's a 2-loss. Ole Miss is a 2-loss.
Well, that's the thing. A&M would be a 3-loss if they lost.
But well, yeah.
Texas
loses. That's what I'm saying.
Loses, they'll be
yeah, that's what I'm saying. If Texas loses, okay. A&M wins the game. If A&M wins the game, A&M is a 2-loss. Texas is a 2-loss, as well as Alabama, Georgia, Ole Miss, and Tennessee.
Right. And I'm not looking past the Tennessee Vanderbilt game. Just let you know that now.
I'm just saying, say those 4 go undefeated. I'm just talking about a potential scenario.
Right. No, I know. I was making a joke because it's very on brand for Tennessee football to do something like that.
Yeah. Got Notre Dame splitting them at 6. They got a big matchup this week. So what are the couple notes that you have as you're looking through this? A couple of the look at the AP top 25. Obviously, it's not going to be the exact same as what the college football playoff committee is going to come up with, but it gives you a good idea for a frame of reference. Is there anything that stands out to you, or any teams that you're like, hey, we probably need to start talking about them a little bit more?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I don't have the AP poll pulled up, and I haven't really looked at it. I honestly, once the college football playoff poll comes out, I really stopped paying attention to the AP. But the notes that I do have are on kind of what I guess kind of what I think is ahead for some of these teams when the poll does come out, the playoff poll does come out. based off this past week, kind of what this means for certain teams. And since we're on the aspect of it, I'll kind of stay in that SEC realm. I have a couple other teams too, but so I'll start with so what this means for Georgia, right? So they beat Tennessee. They're 8-2. Their best wins are Texas and Tennessee, which are, and their worst losses. There were only 2 losses: Alabama and Ole Miss. So, what it means for Georgia, I think that if they went out, if they went out and they don't necessarily control their own destiny, but if they went out and Texas loses, they're in the SEC championship. And I think that if Georgia makes it, if Texas loses and Georgia wins out and makes it to the SEC championship, I think they're in win or lose to the playoff. That would put them at 10-3 or 11-2. So win or lose in the SEC championship, I think they're in. That would pin them against A&M. I would take Georgia in Atlanta, personally. I think most would. But I would say that they're in either way if they make the SEC championship. Now, if A&M loses to Texas, I believe it would be Alabama. And actually, now that I mention it, I think Alabama might. Well, because Alabama has a tiebreaker. So they might still be in the SEC championship over Georgia if Texas loses. But if Texas wins, wins out, they'll be in the SEC championship, and then I think it's between Alabama and Georgia. What this means for Tennessee, they definitely need some help. BYU losing to Kansas this past week helps a little bit. I got my thumbs up there. That helps. And then wouldn't mind Notre Dame losing to Army. That would help Tennessee a lot too. But Tennessee's gonna need a little bit of help. Who does Ole Miss plays somebody this week? Is it South Carolina?
No, Ole Miss plays Florida.
That's right. I knew that. So if Florida can beat Ole Miss, that would help Tennessee out a lot too. But
it's in Gainesville.
Yes, exactly. And it's unfortunately it's a noon game, but I think that'll be a tough one for Ole Miss. That would help Tennessee's case. Florida was able to come out of that. DJ Lagway is playing as of right now, and he's 3-1 as the starter, but 3-0 if he plays the full game. So who knows? And it's in the swamp. We'll see. But Tennessee does need some help. That would help. It also depends on where the committee puts them tomorrow after the loss to Georgia, what they believe that loss looks like to them. What this means for BYU losing to Kansas does not help their case ranking-wise. However, they're still in the lead of the Big 12. They're still on par to, as long as they win out, they'll be in the Big 12 championship. So if they win out, they still control their own destiny of being in the playoff. The KU loss, like the Tennessee-Arkansas loss, kind of throws a wrench into the season that they don't need and can't really afford or can barely afford, but they're still fine for now. But man, they play Arizona State this week in Phoenix. So and obviously quiet ASU team now making a little bit of noise. So if they drop this one, it really, really mixes up the Big 12, which we predicted, of course. Big 12 being a crazy show. Now, what this means for Arizona State with their win this past week, I mean, it really launches them into the Big 12 title conversation. They have to beat BYU, though. If they don't beat BYU, they're done. Because then it'll be BYU and Colorado, and that's it. And ASU won't be good enough to make the playoff. So ASU's still in the conversation now. They're kind of out of nowhere, but they are.
Yeah.
But they have to beat BYU this week.
They kind of control their own destiny, but they have to win. Pretty much got to win out and they'll be in.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact route to it, so I don't want anyone quoting me being like, "Oh, you're wrong." But I think they need to win out, and then I think they might need Colorado to lose. But I don't know for sure, so I don't want anyone quoting me.
Well, I just don't know.
Um,
Would they have the tiebreaker over BYU and Iowa State?
um,
That would be the question.
I guess BYU. Yeah, if they beat BYU, yeah, they would have the tiebreaker over BYU because BYU already has one Big 12 loss now, and that would be their second loss, so they'd be tied with ASU. So yeah, ASU needs to win out. I'm pretty sure that's correct. So ASU just needs to win out, and they're in. And then it's ASU and Colorado most likely. Um,
Yep.
Iowa State needs a couple people to lose. I read it earlier, and I don't remember. But they need Colorado to lose, and there was somebody else. But Iowa State needs a lot of help. It's possible, but unlikely.
Yeah.
Um,
And looking at
that's what I got on the rankings.
and we got Boise State. The Group of Five conversation is definitely going to get a little bit interesting. Is UNLV still hanging around at 8-2? Possibly, I believe UNLV, are they still in the Mountain West?
They are, but the problem there is that if Boise State and Colorado State went out, they're both undefeated in the Mountain West, so they'd be in the Mountain West Championship. So UNLV
Okay.
would be done.
Yeah, that'll
Um,
put a fork in them.
yeah, at UNLV's 4-1 in the Mountain West, and Colorado State's 5-0. Weirdly enough, they're 7-3, 5-0 in the Mountain West, and then obviously Boise State's 9-1 overall, and they're 6-0 in the Mountain
Yeah.
West. So yeah, all that needs to happen is Boise State and Colorado State went out.
Yeah, then you got Army and Tulane kind of lurking back there as the number 2 and 3.
Those are the. So that's the cool thing about the American, the AAC too, right? So if you have Army, which Vegas is saying they're not going to, but if you have Army beat Notre Dame this week, that's a top 10 win for an undefeated team. They'll likely be in the AAC Conference Championship. Actually, I think they already are. I think it's actually the only conference that has like a set matchup, Army and Tulane. So if you have those two teams play, and as you say, Army beats Notre Dame, quality top 10 win, but then Tulane beats Army. No, I guess it's a two-loss Tulane. So then at that point, if Boise State won out, Boise State would be in. But if Army wins out, if they beat Notre Dame and beat Tulane, they win out in the regular season and beat Tulane in the AAC Championship. That's an undefeated Group of 5 with a top 10 win. That's something Boise State doesn't have.
Yeah, but could you imagine the argument against Tulane? They're going to be like, well, they lost to a terrible Oklahoma team. You know what I mean?
It might be. It might be. That's it. But if Tulane were to win out, because they already have 2 losses, so if they were to win out, Boise State were to win out, Boise State would be in. There wouldn't really be an argument for Tulane.
Yeah.
Where it gets sticky is the Army Boise State conversation if both went out. And growing up, Boise State fan. My sister went to undergrad there. Her husband went to undergrad there. Big Boise State fan. Always have been.
Like your 3 schools. You have 3 schools. You're a Tennessee first, Iowa State second, and Boise State's like your third.
Yeah, and then the UCLA Bruins are sprinkled in there. That's my mom.
Okay. I was going to say, I've never heard that one, but all right.
Yeah, yep. That's the other one, but they're pretty bad this year. And then my sister, her master's degree is from Georgia. I cannot stand Georgia, so
not happening. Not happening.
But yeah, to my point, big Boise State fan. So I don't want anyone to call me out for any biases, but the argument, in my opinion, is for Army over Boise State if they both went out.
Well, I mean, we're going to get back into the debate that we had last week. What does the committee care about? Quality win or quality loss?
Well, I just don't know how you argue with an undefeated Army team with a top 10 win.
I don't see how you could.
Yeah, you'll have Boise State in a 3-point loss to Oregon,
but
they have 1 loss. So it's like,
my question is that the point where it starts to get sticky for some SEC teams that are sitting there with 2 losses?
They're not gonna. If they were to put both Boise State and Army in the playoff over one of those 4 teams I talked about, I want the whole committee fired. Because the fact of the matter is, and to leave biases out of this, take Tennessee out of the conversation, right? Just give me the 3 teams: Georgia 2 loss, Alabama 2 loss, Ole Miss 2 loss. I'm taking any one of those 3 teams against Army or Boise State on a neutral site field.
Well, the thing about those ones is they all have a top 25 win. But if Texas loses,
yeah, I mean,
Texas is a 2-loss.
I don't see the committee personally leaving Texas out because
No,
it's Texas,
I'm not. I'm not saying
they're a big eye test ranking when it comes to the committee
yeah.
is they're big on eye test ranking Texas for whatever reason.
But I'm
So I
just
think
saying
Texas is the last one that they leave out. But I see what you're saying. Yeah, they have zero top 25 losses, or excuse me, wins.
top 25 wins, 0.
Yeah.
I'm just saying,
and that would put Army at undefeated with
a top 20.
10 win.
Yeah, top 10 win.
So
yeah, more than likely it would be Army and Notre Dame if Army beats Notre Dame. Which let's go ahead and roll on to our week 13 predictions. We've kind of killed the top 25. So Monty, sitting at our current predictions, you are 1 game back. I'm 44-26. You're 43-27.
yeah, I was gonna say, what'd you end up going? I went 3-1.
Yeah, I think I went 2-2. I think I split them. Oh,
I got a thumbs up and fireworks.
okay. All right, we'll give it to you. All right. 3-1. That's a good week.
See, I think this app is liking my. There you go. They're liking my playoff takes, man.
Yeah, that's it. All right, so first game on the slate. As always, we always predict OU Tennessee first. So we got Alabama coming to Norman.
Tennessee one, by the way, will be nice and quick. I promise.
Yeah. We got Alabama coming to OU, take on Oklahoma in Norman. Big game. I believe it is a night game in Norman. Yeah, it is. Currently, Alabama's favored by 14 points. And right now, with everything Alabama's got riding on the line, riding on the season, they're not going to drop this game to a stumbling, stuttering Oklahoma team. As much as it pains me, I don't see. I think Jalen Milroe. They're going to. Now, granted, is there an opportunity for Oklahoma to win? It's the SEC. There's an opportunity for somebody to win, but it's going to have to come on. It's going to have to come on the back of great defensive plays, some turnovers from Jalen Milroe, and hope that the offense can take those turnovers and turn them into some points. Now, Alabama, they're probably going to pressure Oklahoma with some QB run game. See how Oklahoma responds to that. They've been pretty good on it throughout the season. Run defense is one of their strong suits on this defense. So we'll see how they match up there. Hopefully they can force Jalen Milroe to beat him with his arm. That will be Oklahoma's best opportunity. Hopefully to try to pull off an upset. But I got to go with Alabama here.
Yeah. I will say I am going with Bama too. I actually had a harder time with this one than people might think, or you might think. I actually did kind of want to take OU with it being a Norman. I hope that the school is getting the students to come out, because obviously it's different when your team's not as good. They're not going to get the students out there as much. If they can still sell, and I don't know, you might know, is this a sold out game?
Yeah, it's sold out. It's still a sold out game.
Okay, so that's good. To get the people there, night game, it can be loud. Like I said, I am still taking Bama, just because it seems like Bama is seemingly peaking right now. Like, as a Tennessee fan, I honestly wouldn't want to play them again on a neutral field right now. It just seems like Bama's kind of getting back in that groove again. And obviously OU's kind of not, right? They're not really peaking. They're not really doing it. They're just kind of stagnant. They're kind of just riding out the season, right? But,
we want bowl eligibility. That's what we want.
That's what I'm saying. But that's the thing. So there's a little bit of fight in there. Like, do you want to make a bowl, or do you want to not make a bowl? So the fight will be there. You'll see it. I think it'll be a raunchy first half. I just think that, like I said, the difference is Bama's defense right now kind of finding themselves, and OU's constantly struggling offenses. I think it could get ugly. I'm not saying it's going to,
but it could.
But it could, and it would happen in the second half. Would be my prediction. So overall, I think I'm going to go with Bama. Whether they cover or not, I don't know, because we've seen really good defensive play from OU this year. So they could hold Jalen Milroe back, and with that, it could be closer than we think. But I am taking Bama.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen OU's defense, even if their offense, isn't doing anything, We've seen them, they'll be able to keep opponents, right around the most anybody scored, I believe is right around 33. I think South Carolina put up 33, and that's coming off the back of, you know, the offense. You didn't score 33 on the defense. The offense gave you, I think, 2 pick sixes or a pick six and a fumble recovery, scoop and score deal. So it's like, the defense is going to play good enough to keep you in the football game. I am interested to see how they do facing Jalen Milroe with just the athlete that he is. Normally he steps on the field, he's probably the best athlete on both sides of the ball. So that's obviously definitely a big challenge to face. See how they do. Hopefully they try to make him beat him throwing the ball and see if they're going to be able to make some plays in the secondary. So we'll go ahead and roll on. Both going with Bama there. We got UTEP going on to take on Tennessee. I haven't spoken to you about who you predicted on this one. I feel like we're both going with Tennessee to get a rebound here, get a redemption game. If you lose this one, got some bad news.
Well, we deserve to lose out the season and not make the playoff. Yeah, I'm taking Tennessee as well.
Tennessee is, just so everybody's aware, they're a 41.5-point favorite, which that's a lot. We'll see if Tennessee's going to be able to cover that. That's kind of probably more the exciting watch to see how much they're going to be able to actually score against UTEP. Yeah. But like I said, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I had saw that spread and it made me think, I'm like, man, like, remind me, right, we talked about the OU Maine game, right?
Yep.
When y'all played Maine. Obviously, UTEP is an FBS team, but on the
well, it's kind of like what I said. It's the same kind of game. It's a palate cleanser. Coming off a tough loss.
What I would love to see is that beginning of the year Tennessee, right, when we played, UT Chat, we played not Kennesaw State, Kent State,
even NC
those
State.
games were, I mean, hell, yeah, that was a shocker too. But they obviously didn't pan out either. But seeing that again, getting kind of cleansing the palate, like you said, that's when I saw the spread. Reminded me of that. Hopefully, we get to see that this week. Maybe get the starters out relatively early and get some rest before we play a dangerous Vandy team. Apparently, never thought I'd say that, but
hey, Clark Kent. Or not Clark Lee, sorry.
Clark. Well, he was Clark Kent for a little while there.
Yeah, he was, especially after that Alabama game. I think anybody would have anointed him Clark Kent.
A 4-star linebacker today, so he might be Clark Kent. Who knows?
Very well. Could be looking at a name change there. So the next big game that we got for a prediction for y'all is we got BYU. Monty kind of mentioned it earlier. BYU traveling to Tempe, Arizona to take on Arizona State.
I guess I said Phoenix. Tempe is probably the more accurate one.
Yeah. Tough matchup here. Arizona State's actually favored in this one by 3.5. It's BYU. They kind of reminded you of Miami this year as you're watching them. They played a lot of one-score games. Kansas has also played a lot of one-score games. However, BYU had won all theirs and Kansas had lost the majority of theirs. Obviously, this last week it flipped. And now they're going on to take on a kind of a red-hot Arizona State team that's kind of came out of nowhere. I think it's kind of a dangerous matchup for BYU. That's why I had to go with Arizona State in this one. Try to see if they could pull off the... Granted, I know it's not technically an upset because they are technically favored to win at home, but still an upset in terms to overall ranking position. So I got to go with Arizona State here.
Yeah, man, they don't want to make the same mistake twice. They don't want to lose 2 in a row. That would severely hurt the chances. Might even completely destroy them. QB play, Jake Retzlaff, the quarterback for BYU, his play in this one I think is paramount to this game. And their defense and shutting down Scatterbo, and I guess apparently now that ASU pass offense. I'm saying they do, man. I'm taking BYU. This is our one game. I think that I don't know what you got for the other two. I can predict what you have, but I'm going with BYU this one. I think all 3 phases of the game for BYU will show this game. Again, I don't have a score prediction for this one. I don't know if it's going to be close or not. It probably, if I were a bet man, it's probably going to be a close game. But I think BYU walks into Tempe, not Phoenix, Tempe, Arizona, and gets the W. I don't see them dropping 2 in a row.
Yeah, man, call me crazy. I think that crowd in Tempe, I think they're gonna be pretty wound up for this one. Haven't probably had a
Oh, and
matchup like that.
I know how rowdy Tempe can get. That
Yeah,
ASU student body can get.
yeah. I think they're gonna be pretty wound up. However, like you said, in close games, BYU they figure out a way to pull it off. Even if it is the most unlikely scenario on how they've done it, they've been able to do it this year. And you got it. There is something to be said about knowing how to win these close football games. Um, which I mean, Arizona State's not unaccustomed to themselves. They've been in a couple close ones. However, it seems like BYU's done it week in and week out. Outside of the Kansas State game and the Arizona State or Arizona game, sorry. So yeah, there's definitely a probably going to be a close game. We're going to differ on it. I got to go with Arizona State. I think they just got a little bit too much of a hot hand, and that home crowd I think is going to be a pretty hostile environment for BYU to come in and play.
Only time will tell. But yeah, that's our first difference of the preview.
I don't know how
So that's
I don't know how
exciting.
much the Mormons are ready. I don't know how well they're going to travel down to Tempe, but definitely two different crowds.
I was gonna say the polar opposites. Some would say,
Yeah,
or at least the older crowds.
yeah. I could lay out a lot of jokes, but I'm going to leave them alone.
Football show. This is a
It's
football show.
football show. All right, so we got next game on the slate. You'd already talked about it. We'd already mentioned it quite a bit through this episode, but we got undefeated Army traveling to. They're actually meeting in Bronx, New York, I believe, for this one. They're playing in Yankee Stadium, so it's a neutral site. To take on Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, at 9-1, number 6 in the AP
part of the
poll.
Shamrock series.
Yeah. Monty, I'm gonna let you go ahead and deep dive this one first. Who you got in this one?
So this one, the right thing to do, the smart thing to do, I should say. The smart thing to do is to go with the favorite, the team that's favored by 2 touchdowns. The more talented team.
Yep.
Talking athlete wise.
Yep.
The team that plays the competition arguably plays the better competition. Army's strength of schedule, I believe, is at 133rd in the country. Smart thing to do is take the Golden Domers. That's the smart thing to do. 14-point favorite. Man, I'm taking America's team. I'm going with Army. I got to go with them. I got to go with Army, dude. I got to go with Army. Who am I? Do I think I'm going to be right? Probably not. But am I going to go with the boys? Am I going to go with America's team? Absolutely, I'm going to go with them. Man, I want to see that freaking veer shoved down the Irish's throats. I want to see that veer, that triple option, and I want them to run it down the Irish's throats. And I hope I see it. Do I think it's going to happen? Man, it's tough, but America needs it.
Yeah, the only thing about this game is, man, I got to go against you here. I'm going with Notre Dame. My rooting interest is in Army in this game. I hope I am wrong. However, the kind of games that Army wins is they take their opponent and they drag them into the mud. However, when you look at this Notre Dame team, that's exactly what they're built to do. They're built on they're like a more talented Army team. They're built to run the football. Riley Leonard's going to run the football just like Army's quarterback.
So you changed your.
Yeah, I changed it.
You're trying to beat me in our overall record. That's what you're doing. You should have picked Army. I picked Army because I was like, you know what? I think that they can win this game. I was like, do I think that they're going to? Maybe not, but do I think they can? And I was like, well, this doesn't hurt our record if I pick what he's picking, an Army. So I went with Army, dude. And you just let me down. But you know what? Even better, now I know Army's going to win. So
okay, well,
go ahead. Take your flashy BS cutesy team. I'm going with the dogs, man. I'm going with the beat down, rumbling, stumbling Army Black Knights.
Well, the only advantage that Notre Dame has is they have seen the veer already this year. They've already prepared for it once.
But that's Navy. That's Navy. We're talking Army.
I understand this is the next level veer. However, Notre Dame, they're comfortable playing the style of game that Army wants to play. They're more talented on defense, more talented on offense, and they can run the ball and play defense. It's kind of what Notre Dame after that NIU game.
But are they more technically sound?
I guess that's what we're going to find out. Let's go ahead and roll on to the next game. We got not as much of kind of America's other team outside of Army is Indiana 10-0. They're traveling to the shoe, take on Ohio State in Columbus. Ohio State 9-1 with the only loss to the number one team in the country, Oregon, by 1 point. Monty, Ohio State's favored by 12.5 in this one against the undefeated team. What do you think here?
So I would like to say one thing about that 12.5 point spread. I saw something earlier today. It was like, man, if you have the number 2 team hosting the number 5 team in the country and they're favored by 12.5 points, probably not the number 5 team coming to you, right? But that's Vegas doesn't think Indiana's all that. Obviously, it's Indiana's biggest game of the year, right? People have been saying they haven't played anybody. You know, they're undefeated, but they haven't played anybody. But I mean, I'm kind of on board with Vegas. I don't, as much as it'd be cool to see Indiana go undefeated and beat a big time Ohio State. Will I be rooting for Indiana? Probably. Will it help Tennessee if Indiana loses? Probably. But will I be rooting for Indiana? Yeah, but I'm going with Ohio State, man. I maybe you can make an argument if this game was in Bloomington, Indiana, but it's not. It's right. It's in the shoe, and it's one of the toughest places to play in the country. And this, apparently, other than the Penn State game, and I'd argue it is more so. This is Ohio State's biggest game of the season, right?
Yeah. Home game.
They home game against the only other undefeated team in the conference, and they already lost to the other one. So, man, you got to beat. Like, what if if they lose? They're
not in the conference.
They're not in the Big Ten championship. So, this is as big, if not bigger, game for Ohio State than it is for Indiana. So,
yeah. So you're going with the Buckeyes.
Going with the Buckeyes, yes, sir.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you. I'm going with the Buckeyes as well. I think. Has Indiana played really good football this year? Yes. However, you can also say, has their 10-0 record been assisted by their schedule? Yes. Now, granted, they've played some, comparatively good teams. Michigan is not the Michigan that won the national championship last year.
No, they're not.
But, Indiana just beat them last week. However, they haven't faced anybody that's as good as Ohio State is this year, or as talented as Ohio State is this year with their $20 million roster. So, yeah, I think Kirk Cincinnati, he's definitely going to be a springboard year for him in Ohio. He just got a huge contract, 8 more years with Indiana.
Yeah, this is year 1 of him.
Yeah, year 1.
His first year, and he's 11-0 or 10-0? I don't want to get it wrong.
Oh, he's 10-0.
I think it's 10-0. Okay, so they have 2 more games then?
Yeah, 2 more games. They got I believe they got to play Ohio State, then they got to travel to Purdue. Or they get Purdue at home, I think.
One win Purdue. Hey man, they're dangerous.
Dangerous. So yeah, I got to go with Ohio State in this one. Of course, it's an 11 a.m. kickoff.
Yeah.
Shout out Big Noon. Shout out Big Noon.
It just blows my mind, man. Blows my mind.
But hey,
Army Notre Dame though. That's a night game.
Night game.
What they're doing over there.
Yeah. Yeah, I gotta go with Ohio State with this one. I think Indiana's going to suffer their first loss. I think they're going to put up a good fight. Eventually, though, I think probably more towards the second half, third quarter, Ohio State's probably going to start pulling away with this one. We'll see if I was just saying we'll see if they're going to be able to cover that 12.5. Maybe, maybe not. I could see Ohio State getting to about a 10-point lead and then just relying on that defense there.
Yeah, and that's the thing I wanted to note about that game too. Indiana playing at Ohio State, man. If Indiana, even if Indiana loses, right? If they play Ohio State close, obviously predicted to beat Purdue right the next week, they're in. But they're in. Even if they're not in the Big Ten championship, I'd argue that they're in. If they lose a close loss, because as we've seen, the committee, what they value is good losses, right? So if they play this one close, if they don't let Ohio State cover that spread, they're in my opinion. And I think that most people would argue that because they would end the season at 11-1. They'd sit out the Big Ten championship, be arrested, and I mean that. Yeah, they would sit out the conference championship, but no, yeah, I would say Indiana's definitely in if they lose this one close. Definitely, obviously, if they win, but we shall see.
Yeah, let's go ahead and roll on. We'll close out the show just like we always do. We got our dubs and duds of the week. Monty, who are we kicking in the nuts this week, man? Who you got?
This is one of my better ones, I think, man. And this happened, or at least the news hit today. Man, Kennesaw State fired their head coach. Not only did they fire their head coach, so this is their first. So for people that may not know, this is Kennesaw State's first year at the FBS level after being a very good FCS team. First year at the FBS level, they didn't do well. I believe they have 1 or 2 wins this season.
I think I said it earlier in the show. They're 1-9.
Okay, and they fired their head coach. Not only did they fire their head coach, they put the job opening on Indeed. The job finding website. The job for the Kennesaw State head coaching position is on Indeed. So not only did they fire a coach they shouldn't have, in my opinion. First year at the FBS, Sam Houston's first year was last year. They had a very similar year to Kennesaw State. You said earlier that they're now 8-2 in year 2, right? So Kennesaw State's first year at the FBS level, just getting used to that competition. Fire their head coach after he beats an undefeated Liberty team. Not right after, but a couple weeks after. I don't know.
Yeah,
and Kennesaw State, and then put the job on Indeed. That's a loss for Kennesaw State. That's the school's fault, not the head coach's fault.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of a tough deal there. He posted it on Indeed. I didn't know that happened.
Anyone can apply. They might have taken it down now because it kind of went viral, but yeah, they put it on Indeed.
Do you think JMU set unrealistic expectations last year whenever they moved up to the FBS level?
No, not at all. I think North Dakota State could do it. South Dakota State could do it.
Well, I'm just saying what I'm saying is Kennesaw State's like, hey, why are we not performing like JMU did last year? With their first year, they came in rolling.
I mean, I don't think JMU's first year wasn't last year, was it?
I thought that was the whole deal, was because they
it was either last year or the year prior, but I mean, yeah, JMU came in hot. Obviously, didn't do what Sam Houston did, or even Kennesaw State. But that's if they were to say that, right? The argument for that head coach would be, well, yeah, look at Sam Houston.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I don't know. I think you gotta have some time to be able to get the money that comes from making that jump and be able to implement that new money, and hopefully be able to use that to improve your program. Look at what it's doing for Sam Houston, and just their second year. Kind of funny that they fired him immediately following the loss to Sam Houston. That's kind of interesting there. You want to go ahead and move on to my dud of the week?
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right, so I thought about going with LSU here after their loss to Florida. We haven't mentioned it, but LSU kind of starting to see their season unravel on them a little bit. We'll see if Brian Kelly can right the ship there. But I had to go with BYU. We already mentioned it, losing to Kansas, losing their first game of the season, and kind of turning the Big 12. I mean, the Big 12. We had already said it was going to be kind of a monster to be able to come out of there unscathed.
Just made it more difficult at the top.
Yeah, at the top, it just seems to be just piling up there. So yeah, I had to go with BYU. Tough first loss, but like you mentioned earlier, everything's still in front of them. But yeah, definitely a tough loss, especially taking that loss to a Kansas team at home. That Kansas obviously um, was 3-6 at the time. So a 3-win Kansas team losing BYU 9-0, losing to them at home. Had to go with BYU there for my dud of the week.
Yeah, BYU, they controlled their own destiny. They still kind of do right now, but they could have solidified themselves as at least a playoff contender for sure, going undefeated, but definitely a Big 12 contender. One thing about that Kansas team, man, now it seems like too little, too late, but they've kind of found themselves. Maybe they got to win against Iowa State. They got to win against BYU on the road. Like Kansas was supposed to be better than what their record shows this year, right? And I think they've kind of, like I said, found themselves now. Still fighting for bowl eligibility. They're climbing rather than coasting into it, but 4-6 now with two top 10 wins, at least at the time. Iowa State was. So anyway, never know with Kansas, and they got Colorado this week.
Yeah, and there's
giant killer Kansas.
Yeah, that's there's definitely two ways to get to 6-6, and the vibes at 6-6 do tend to feel different. If you started 6-0 and you finish 6-6, hey, that program's in some murky water. But if you started real low and you just
they were 2-6, they were 2-6,
and you climb your way to 6-6, hey, things are looking up. We're coming. We might be on a rebound here.
If they get to 6-6, not only are they getting to 6-6 from 2-6, they would have 2 top 10 wins and 3 top 25 wins.
And they did it playing probably the best the Big 12 has to offer. So big game,
literally
big game for Kansas this week. Obviously a huge game for Colorado with everything that's riding on it for the season for them.
Giant killer Kansas. Look out!
All right, so Monty, who did you have for your dub of the week this week? What'd you end up deciding with?
We talked about him a little bit earlier today. Man, the week that he had, you couldn't pass it up, right? Lenore Sellers, they say, threw for 353 yards, 5 touchdowns, and an interception, but was clutch at the end of the game. Really won that game for South Carolina. Big game against Mizzou, making South Carolina look really good right now. And some are saying, I'm not necessarily saying it, but some are saying a little bit of an argument for a playoff spot. But they're at 7-3, but man, with him at the helm, you never know what's possible. So Lenore Sellers is definitely my dub of the week. Like I said, 5 touchdowns and a clutch win. Got to give it to him.
Yeah, got to feel for Gamecocks fans if that pick 6 that they had called back ends up being what derails or ruins the playoff chances for them. Because I don't think there would really be any question with a 7 if South Carolina was 8-2 right now. They're right up there. They're right up there with all the
other one of those probably 10-2 teams.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I had to go with my dub of the week this week. Kind of a Big 12 edition for me. I had obviously BYU losing to Kansas is my dud. As my dub, I had to go with the team that BYU's facing this week. Arizona State winning over Kansas State. Kind of almost announcing themselves to the country, saying, "Hey, don't forget about us."
I would say literally. I mean, no one really knew what the record was until they played K-State and then beat K-State.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we already kind of deep dived the game a little bit, but kind of emphasizes just how big of a win that was for them, and then also how big of a game they have this week against BYU. Arizona State maybe be able to play themselves into a playoff contention, which I don't think anybody had on their bingo card this year. I know I didn't.
No, if you told me in week 1 that Colorado and ASU might be playing for a Big 12 title, I'd be like, dude, you don't know anything about college football. And here we are. So it's very, very poetic for the season.
Yeah. One thing about the Big 12, it is definitely provided for some exciting matchups this year.
Credit to us. We said it, man.
Yeah, was high on the Big 12. They're probably, I mean, obviously they're just not with the logjam that the SEC also has going. Big 12's not going to be able to get probably more than their
One.
champion in, whoever ends up winning the Big 12 title. However, been an exciting conference to watch this year, that's for sure. Monty, let's go ahead and close out the show, man. What, you got any closing thoughts? Anything you want to say?
Yes, the only thing I was going to say was that I was looking at because of what the Big 12 is this year. I was looking at the standings, and one of the teams that we projected to be towards the top, besides Utah, of course, Oklahoma State, 0-7 in the Big 12.
Yeah, my conference champions.
Winless in the Big 12.
My conference championship prediction, it was the same as a lot of people for the Big 12, was Utah and Oklahoma State, and Utah is 1-6 in the Big 12, and Oklahoma State is 0-7. So L for me on that one.
hey, I had Iowa State winning the Big 12. It looked good for a while there, and it's looking very very dim in the near future. But
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
I was just saying, man, I'm looking at, so I have the standings pulled up right now, and just the log jam that is the Big 12. I mean, you have 4. You have 5 3-loss teams in the Big 12, as far as their Big 12 record, with Kansas State, Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, and West Virginia. And then, those are closely followed by 3 4-loss teams. And then obviously you got BYU, Colorado, Arizona State, and Iowa State up at the top of the rankings. Just crazy how competitive that conference is.
That's what we said it was going to be, though, man. I mean, it's the Big 12. It's those teams that they linger around like number 15 in the country to like number 45 in the country, and just beat up on each other.
It's any given week in the Big 12 conference. For that, man, that's going to wrap up the episode for us. Thank y'all for tuning in. I mean, we actually had a record number of views on the past week's episode, so we're hopefully get this one out and hopefully get a couple more views on it for us. Like I said, be sure to keep telling your friends about it. That's the best way to spread word about the show, word of mouth. As Monty said, if you hate it, tell them. Maybe they'll hate it too. That's what we'll take any kind of viewership or any kind of feedback that we can get on the show.
Tell your friends how incredibly bad it is because of how biased they are. Tell them to listen. They got to listen to it. No, I'm just kidding.
Either way, if y'all have any feedback, like I said, let us know. If there's anything y'all want to put into the show, let us know. We'll be sure to drop it in a mailbag. Man, thank y'all for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the show on X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It really helps grow the show. And man, thank y'all for listening. Until next week, we'll catch y'all. Peace.